April the 16th, 2026. Guys, the situation in Iran has not changed much in the last few days. What is happening is, I think on the 22nd, the current ceasefire ends. And what I did see this morning was Pete Hegseth said that if they did not come to terms by the 22nd, then bombing would continue. Now, that's what he has to say about it. And of course, we hope that doesn't happen. It doesn't have to happen. And, of course, in the military, you have to, use a show of force, even in words sometimes, to catch people's attention. But they're saying the situation in Iran is dominated by a fragile 2-week ceasefire and an ongoing war with the U.S. and Israel. Despite the pause in active combat, significant military and diplomatic developments are unfolding. I think the main thing militarily is, guys, Israel is bombing Lebanon. And, of course, heard the dispute a few weeks ago that Lebanon was not part of the deal, and that has to do with Iran's really elite forces, kind of like the SEALs or special forces, but that's the Hezbollah that is in Lebanon. So that is has continued. But what I have noticed, and I double-checked, is that Iran has not attacked any of its neighbors, and that was a big deal. For about 5 or 6 hours, according to different reports from that area, there were some attacks on Iran's neighbors, but that came under control pretty quickly. It could have just been a little bit of misinformation right at the last, or some retaliation real quick. You understand what I'm saying? But so far, that part of it has held tight. The situation is pretty much the same in the Straits. Some ships are coming out, not from Iranian ports. And again, the mainstream and a lot of people have it wrong that the blockades have been run. There have not been. They're in complete control of it. And guys, they're talking about now that Iran is losing so many millions, over 325 million per day, not being able to ship oil out, and that their economy may not have very long at all, maybe just a month or so. But the U.S. military has fully implemented a naval blockade of all Iranian ports, including the Straits. U.S. CENTCOM reports that trade into and out of Iran by sea has been completely halted, though some reports suggest a dark fleet may be still moving oil via covert offshore networks. Could be, but nothing bypasses the satellites. And President Trump has stated the war is very close to over, maybe because he realizes the economic situation there in Iran. I did see some reports to where they're rapidly trying to rebuild back some of the infrastructure, some bridges and things like that, in case they have to put their military back into, what's left of it back into a wartime situation where they can move about. And so they're doing that during the ceasefire. They're not just laying low, which you can't blame any nation. You've got to come back from whatever's going on. And I've heard that the IRGC, the Iranian Mullahs militia, basically, has really sped up the assassination of people that were pro-freedom in Iran. And that's going down as we hear reports that the citizens are starting to rise up and fight back. But again, they don't have the full military capabilities that the IRGC does, guys, as far as weaponry. And Pakistan is currently mediating between the two sides, with its army chief visiting Tehran to push for a breakthrough. President Trump has says he doesn't care if they come back to the table or not. Everything's hunky-dory with him the way it is right now, with all the tankers coming into the Gulf of America. Whatever. If you think about a war, and you go back in history, thousands of years, sometimes wars were not won directly in battle. They were won by sieges, the cutoff of supplies, until the other nation gave up. Said, okay, we give up. The war's over. And then whatever happened. But that's kind of what we're seeing right now. Now, Europe may not have but about a month's left of jet fuel. they're in trouble. And we talked about the Mobil crude oil it's probably a little over $100 a barrel right now, but that's used a lot in that area for the jet fuel, not just military, but, Delta flights or whatever companies they have there, Euro Air. But, so knocking back a lot of things. They're going to cut back on flights. They're going to have to. They become more expensive because fuel is. And, so shipping there in Europe, everything is going to be affected. But Europe has turned into a very bad place. Not every small nation, I guess, but most of them have. Spain, Germany, the big ones, France, all of those, they have pretty much handed it over to the devil. And they did it by being overrun through their borders and allowing the people that came in with completely different ideology to overtake the politics, just like Mandami in New York, things like that. But what they're doing is, again, setting up a situation or the U.S. is setting up a situation where you've got a lot of people in trouble at one time. And right now, all the EU and that union is thinking about how they can come against the U.S., making plans. But that's all they do is talk. I don't think they've got anything between them to push a war against the U.S., not without backing of one of the other superpowers. And that may come into play. We'll just have to keep an eye on that. Now, Iran has threatened to retaliate by blocking all shipping in the Persian Gulf, the Gulf of Oman, and the Red Sea. And the Red Sea is basically, if I'm not mistaken, it could be cut off, guys, by Yemen and the Houthis there, another Iranian proxy. They're saying if the American blockade continues, but I would just say to Iran, I'm not sure what the Houthis will do, but as far as Iran, I don't think you got a lot of choice about blocking anything right now. If you move one of your warships, it gets disappeared very quickly to the bottom. So how are you going to do that? What they need to do is wake up and realize they are in a situation to where they need to have peace talks. They need to let go of their uranium ambitions, if that's a big sticking point. But right now, opening the straits is not Trump's big deal. He doesn't care if they come back to the talks. I don't blame him. You've won the war. The war's over, but mainstream media, including Fox, is trying to push the narrative the other way. Sad. But experts warn Iran's economy could collapse within 3 months under the weight of the blockade, which is estimated to be costing the country roughly $435 million per day. 3 months. Amid the conflict, there's a reported surge in domestic executions. We talked about that. Human rights groups have specifically highlighted the upcoming execution of the first female prisoner linked to the January 2026 anti-regime uprising. And again, U.S. Defense Secretary Hegseth recently warned that if Tehran does not agree to the deal, the U.S. is prepared to resume strikes on Iranian infrastructure and energy facilities. Now, right now, they're not attacking their neighbors. They are in a conflict with Israel because of their proxies in Lebanon. But will it, on the 22nd, I think is when this peace deal is up, will the strikes resume automatically? That's what's not clear here. Or wouldn't it be better just to, stand back and see what happens? You keep the straits in the situation you got them in now, and let the seas, or, when you surround a nation, you cut them off from supplies and cut off their ability to continue what they were doing. They don't last very long, and they're collapsing from within. That would be much better than going in and doing any more bombing, unless it's missile launch sites, nuclear sites, things like that are strategically dangerous to the rest of the world. Now, all I can dig up really on this peace deal is that right now Pakistan's army chief Qasem Munir is currently in Tehran to secure a second round of negotiations and push for an extension beyond the April 22nd deadline. Mediators have reportedly floated a 45-day extension to allow for more substantive peace talks. Now, that may be something Trump could agree to, and the reason why, that's 45 more days of tankers coming to the Gulf of America. And in that 45-day period, by the time that's over, and we're, a week away from that, according to the financial experts, Iran only has about another 4 or 5 weeks, maybe 6 weeks after that, before their economy completely collapses. So, again, I'd say just hold on to the straits, do what you're doing, keep our troops out of harm's way. They're there if needed. And if Iran sticks that ugly head up militarily, slap it. But, it would be best to let it stay exactly like it is, because Trump has won. Nobody can come against him. Nobody will, unless Europe ties in with a superpower, because Europe no longer is a superpower, all of it combined, okay? We've already seen that. So unless Russia or China steps in, then it will continue the way it is, in my opinion. Trump stated on April 14th that he is not currently considering an extension, maintaining pressure on Tehran to reach a final agreement, which, of course, that's what he would say. But we've seen on the deadline dates in this war more than once that extensions did occur. Said despite the active ceasefire, no date or location has been finalized for the next round of direct talks as of April 16th. Another thing I'd like to say about that is I think there's been a couple rounds already. And so we're having to send Vance over and some other mediators over, Kushner and that group. And on Air Force Two, cost a lot of money. Let them come over and talk to us. They're the ones, Pakistan needs to just back up out of the way and let it go down the way it's going to go down between Iran and the U.S. Pakistan really has no mediation powers. It's just, if you look at the situation, what they're trying to do is look good in the eyes of the world as a peacemaker. But they have no other, that's their main ambition, is to make themselves look good. So again, if I were Trump, which I'm not, and they said, okay, we're ready to talk, I'd tell them to get on an airplane, we'll meet you somewhere, Miami or wherever you want to meet, a couple of you guys, and we'll talk. Other than that, we're not interested. And the talks may not last long once you get here. We're in no hurry. We're the new gas station of the world. That's pretty much his attitude right now. But the Democrats are coming at him hard right now. And even some ex-Republicans like MTG and that bunch calling for mental status checks and things like that. But their enemy is, our enemy, let me put it this way, is inside our gates. The Democrats in Virginia just passed that new crazy governor they got. She passed a deal to where that state will vote by its college electoral vote, or its electoral votes. And they're joining a group of states, and that you got to have like 270 something electoral votes in the presidential election. And with the other states that have agreed so far, and some of them already have joined this pact, this national law they're trying to make it, enough to go about 240 electoral votes so far. Okay? So and what that would do was forever rig the presidential elections to the Democrats. Do you understand what I'm saying? The enemy is within the gates. Now, with the deal in New York, it's completely chaos. Mandami came out and said he's going to spend $30 million to build a grocery store for cheap groceries in there on taxpayer dollars. And that he'll have it open by probably 2029. Talk about grifting. And they just they're losing landlords left and right in these big buildings. And so what he did was either this morning or late yesterday, he reenacted the squatters' rights, where now they're going in and taking over all these buildings. And if you think about it, it would make a good movie, probably pretty close to what happened. He was told to destroy the nation's top city. And, they consider the U.S. Babylon. And when you look at the politicians, you can't blame them. I can't. But they said, your mission, young man, as they groomed him to do this, is to destroy America, the home of Satan. I'm talking, in the mullah's language and the Muslim language, the great Satan, destroy their great city. He's doing a good job of it, and he's really being allowed to do it. And again, I don't think it's that the U.S. has their hands full in so many other areas. It's they've just decided if you want to be a hellhole, go ahead and drop to the bottom. Once people drop all the way to the bottom, they wake up. They look around and say, what the hell did we vote for? They thought they were getting everything free. So you're kind of rotting in your own stench. But, I don't know how far down they will let it go, but right now, the police are getting arrested for arresting people. It's crazy. They let out thousands and thousands of prisoners and gang members now out of the jails. It just happened one group of 2,000 in one of the city's big jails was released, and now the gangs have reformed and are robbing, raping, and shooting. The streets aren't safe anymore. They haven't been for a long time, but now it's really to extremes. Again, they are taking down the great city of Babylon in their eyes. But I just want to come in here, guys. There wasn't a lot of updates going on yesterday. It would have been a very repetitive video. We're getting a few now, especially the economic situation. I do want to end this by looking at the oil prices. And guys, if we look at this, you got the Dow, it's down 40. Everything's pretty flat, basically. But what happened was the S&P 500 and NASDAQ, guys, hit fresh record highs. Look at the NASDAQ, 24,000. S&P at 7,000. Dow at 48,000. I thought years and years ago I'd never see that. But they said it would happen, and they were right. But let's look at oil. Now, Brent is 97.91. That's up nearly $3 and 3.11% change. May oil on the contracts, 93.28. That's up $1.99. And what we're seeing is a float up for a few dollars on some news report and then go back down a couple dollars. And it's just like they're drifting in the current right now, waiting for some type of action before the markets really react. But Bensett came on and said that he expects that they're going to get it back down in a couple months to the $70 range. And that would put us probably on the average, except for the big libtard states, maybe just a few pennies under $3. But I'm seeing now diesel has gotten over $6 in many places. And that's going to impact your groceries for sure, because Walmart sends out a lot of trucks. Natural gas is up a little bit, but Murban crude, this is where your jet fuel comes from out of Saudi, right there. And we saw this at almost 150 at the peak of the war, as they were exchanging attacks over the Persian Gulf between UAE and Iran. But it's cut off right now. They don't have the full capabilities. They've repaired some other fuel, the big pipelines that they can pump northward instead of having to go into the ocean, but they don't have the capability to handle the volumes that way that they normally would. So that's what's putting, I think, the jet fuel or the jet fuel industry in Europe in trouble, is this Murban crude and the low supply coming out of Saudi. So again, you've got Europe to the east. You've got, you come back to the Middle East, and you got people in trouble all through there. And the ones that are in trouble, guys, were the ones that were collapsing already. And so they're looking for some way to pull out of that economic collapse. And of course, you've got the BRICS starting in just a few weeks in India, and that's going to determine a lot as far as petrodollar, petro-yuan, but it's going to move to a central digital currency. Many have feared that over the years, as we talked about it, but saying that it would control everything you can, and which we were told you would not be able to buy, sell, trade, barter without the mark. Now, whether or not that would be a mark, I don't know. But that was the name of some ancient currency. Anyway, guys, this is what we got going on. Again, it's just kind of cruising through right now like the stock market, of course, except for Israel and Lebanon. So if it holds like that, that may be what we see as the Iran fades into total collapse in their economy, and that may be what triggers the freedom of Iran. People take over. We're watching it, guys. You watch it. It's a heads up. Be safe.